Funny how the word emergency makes hearts skip a beat, like suddenly time itself has teeth. You hear it, and your pulse jumps, your mind races, your hands itch to move faster than they ever have before. Someone says, "Open this now," and the panic sets in, because you start imagining what happens if you don't. That's the trick, isn't it? The pressure of urgency isn't always about the danger itself. It's about the fear of hesitation. People don't realize that most disasters aren't born from the storm, but from the seconds wasted waiting, doubting, second-guessing. When the order comes sharp and clear, it's not asking you. It's daring you to act before the window slams shut. Urgency exposes who can act without hesitation. Because when the signal comes, when the demand hits your ears, there is no time for long speeches or careful debates. The world doesn't pause to give you room to think it over. It slaps you awake, throws the choice in your face, and says, "Move or die." And most people, they crumble under that weight. They freeze, their thoughts spiral. They convince themselves that hesitation is wisdom. But hesitation is just another word for surrender. In those crucial seconds, it's not the clever one who wins, not the calm one, not the one with the perfect plan. It's the one who acts. The one who doesn't wait for permission from their fear. You can see it in the smallest things. A fire breaks out, smoke filling the room, alarms screaming. Half the people run toward the exit without a second thought. The others, they stand there blinking, trying to process, waiting for someone else to confirm what they already know. And by the time they move, it's too late. They're trapped in the flames of their own delay. Not because the fire was faster than them, but because their hesitation made it so. The danger wasn't the smoke. It was the seconds they wasted convincing themselves it wasn't real. The funny thing about urgency is that it reveals character like nothing else. You can pretend to be brave when everything is calm. You can wear the mask of confidence when the world is still. But the moment pressure hits, when an order cuts through the noise, the mask falls off. Suddenly, the truth shows itself in how fast your legs move, how quickly your hands reach out, how sharp your decisions cut through the fog. Some people collapse into chaos, others snap into focus. And you only know which one you are when urgency leaves you no room to fake it. What people don't understand is that hesitation feels safe because it feels like control. They think, if I wait just one more second, I'll be smarter. I'll be better prepared. But that second isn't control. It's a chain. Every tick of hesitation wraps tighter around your neck until you can't breathe, can't move, can't escape. The storm doesn't wait for you to feel ready. The trap doesn't loosen just because you're scared. Reality doesn't pause while you make up your mind. Every heartbeat you spend waiting is stolen from the chance you could have taken. In moments of crisis, instinct takes the wheel. That's why urgency separates people. It doesn't give you time to wear your mask. It forces your real self into the light. You can't lie about your courage when the fire is at your back. You can't pretend you're strong when hesitation already swallowed your chance. That's why people fear urgency so much. It strips them down, exposes the truth of who they are. Not the image, not the role, not the performance, just raw instinct. And sometimes, that instinct isn't what they wanted to see. But urgency isn't cruel, it's honest. It says, here's the moment, here's the demand, here's the chance. Do you move or do you rot? There is no gray area. That's why the ones who can act without hesitation rise above the rest. They aren't always the most skilled, but they have something rarer. They've killed the habit of waiting. They trust their gut when others drown in doubt. They understand that in a crisis, the first move is better than no move. They know that hesitation is the slow poison, and urgency is the scalpel that cuts it out. Every emergency is a test, but not of strength or knowledge. It's a test of speed, a test of instinct, a test of whether you can silence the voices in your head long enough to act before the world swallows you whole. And every time that test comes, it writes your truth in bold letters for all to see. You either act and live, or hesitate and watch your chance die in front of you. Seconds wasted are the real killers, not the storm itself. People love to believe it's the size of the problem that destroys them, the strength of the enemy, the chaos of the moment. But it's never that. Storms are predictable, enemies are visible, chaos is loud enough to notice. What buries most people isn't the storm at all. It's the clock. That quiet, merciless ticking that eats away at the edges of their courage. They had a chance, they had a moment to act, but they burned it on doubt, hesitation, and fear disguised as caution. By the time they move, the opportunity is gone, and they blame fate instead of their wasted seconds. Think about how fragile time really is. A few heartbeats can mean the difference between slipping through the closing door or slamming against it. A pause in the wrong place can turn escape into entrapment. A single breath too long can separate survival from ruin. Seconds are not small. They are the knife's edge the world balances on. But most people treat them like loose change, tossing them around as if more will always come. They waste them convincing themselves the storm isn't real, or that they have more time than they actually do. And when reality proves them wrong, they finally understand that time was the real enemy, not the thunder outside. The storm doesn't kill you instantly. It gives you signs. The sky darkens, the air thickens, the warning comes. But what do people do? They stand there staring, bargaining with themselves. Maybe it'll pass. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'll wait just a little longer before I run. They whisper excuses to themselves, and every excuse burns another second. The storm isn't what takes them. It's the waiting. By the time they finally decide to act, the storm is already on top of them, ripping away the chance they thought would still be there. You see it in battles, in disasters, in betrayal, in life itself. The hesitation is always louder than the strike. People spend more time thinking about what they should do than actually doing it. They cling to the illusion that delay is strategy, when it's nothing but surrender in slow motion. They call it caution. Patience, wisdom, but deep down they know it's fear. They dress up their hesitation with pretty names, but the result is the same seconds burned, chances lost. Storms survived by others, but not by them. What's fascinating is how those wasted seconds feel harmless in the moment. A pause doesn't feel like death. A delay doesn't feel like failure. It feels like control. But it's the kind of control a rabbit has when it freezes in front of a wolf. Stillness isn't safety. It's suicide dressed up as caution. Seconds don't forgive. They don't wait for you to get your courage together. They don't pause out of pity. They pass, and once they're gone, they're never coming back. The strongest proof is how different people react to the same storm. One sees the darkness and runs immediately. The other stands frozen, calculating, waiting for confirmation. The storm itself didn't change. It was the seconds each one wasted that determined the outcome. The survivor wasn't stronger, wasn't braver, wasn't smarter. They were simply faster to act, quicker to cut through hesitation. The victim wasn't destroyed by the storm. They were destroyed by their own clock. The seconds they threw away, as if they had a pocketful of eternity. That's why urgency feels so cruel. It doesn't give you the luxury of wasting time. It holds up a mirror and says, show me who you are in these seconds. And most people can't handle that truth. They don't want to see that their own hesitation is the blade against their throat. They'd rather blame the storm, the enemy, the situation, anything but themselves. But the reality is, every second they let slip was another chance strangled. And when you finally count the bodies, after the chaos clears, you'll find most of them weren't killed by the storm at all. They were killed by the seconds they wasted pretending they had more time. Orders in crisis aren't suggestions. They're ultimatums. When the demand cuts through the noise, when the command lands heavy in your chest, you don't get to negotiate. You don't get to debate. You don't get to ask for more time. The moment is already on fire, and the order is the only rope hanging down into the pit. Grab it or don't, climb or fall. But understand that hesitation is not part of the deal. People like to think they always have a choice. That life is a buffet of endless options. But when the world turns sharp, when chaos crashes in, the order you're given is not a gentle request. It's the line between survival and collapse. It's funny how people react in those moments. Some treat the order like advice, as if they can bend it, delay it, reshape it to fit their comfort. They hear, "Move now," and they whisper back, "I'll move soon." They hear, "Open it," and they say, "I'll think about it." And by the time they finish their thinking, the door is shut. The bridge is gone. The opportunity evaporates. Orders in crisis aren't written in ink. They're written in fire. Delay burns them into ash before your eyes. That's what makes emergencies so dangerous. Not the chaos itself, but the illusion that you still have room to choose. You don't. The clock is already bleeding seconds. The ground is already cracking. The knife is already in motion. The command you hear is the only chance you get to rewrite the ending. People who survive aren't necessarily smarter or stronger. They're the ones who understand that the command is absolute. They don't waste their breath questioning it. They don't waste their mind bargaining with it. They obey the urgency of the moment because they know hesitation is a death sentence dressed as thoughtfulness. Orders in crisis also reveal who's addicted to control. Some people can't stand the idea of following something outside their own pace. They think, I'll do it when I'm ready. But readiness doesn't matter when the floor is crumbling under your feet. The order doesn't wait for your pride. It doesn't care about your comfort. It isn't polite. It demands. And if you refuse, you pay. That's the cruel reality. Crisis doesn't bend for ego. And yet ego is what kills more people than the crisis itself. Notice how quickly people crumble when they realize the order isn't optional. Panic sets in because their illusion of freedom shatters. They thought life was a stage where they controlled the script. Suddenly, someone else shouts, "Move," and they realize the script was never theirs. That's when they either adapt or they fall apart. And most fall apart, not because the command was impossible, but because they couldn't let go of their need to hesitate, their need to feel in control. But the rare few, the ones who rise in crisis, they don't see the order as an insult to their freedom. They see it as clarity. In the chaos, the noise, the smoke, when nothing makes sense, an ultimatum slices through like a blade. They don't argue with the blade. They grab it, they act, and they live. They don't need the luxury of options because they know options are illusions in moments like these. They only need the command and their ability to obey it instantly. What people forget is that an order in crisis is not a cage. It's a door. The trap has already closed. The fire has already started. The game is already rigged. The command isn't there to control you. It's there to give you the one way out. Ignore it, delay it, and you'll stay exactly where you are, buried, burned, broken. Take it, and maybe you live to see another moment. But don't confuse it for a choice, because by the time it reaches your ears, the choice has already been made. It's either obedience to the urgency or surrender to the collapse. Every trap has a rhythm, a design so subtle most people walk right into it while smiling, thinking they're safe, thinking they're clever, thinking they're the ones in control. That's the joke, isn't it? People believe they're the hunters, when in reality, they're the prey circling closer to the jaws without even noticing. And the most dangerous part of a trap isn't the teeth, isn't the snap, isn't the blood. It's the comfort before it, the calm air, the silence that makes you think everything is fine. That's when you're weakest, when you relax, when you put your guard down, when you stop questioning the floor under your feet or the hand offering you help. That's when it gets you. You see, traps aren't just built with steel and wire. They're built with psychology, with timing, with your own habits. The best trap doesn't have to chase you. It waits. It studies the way you move, the patterns you repeat, the blind spots you ignore. It knows what bait to use because you've been advertising your hunger all along. People give away everything. They can't help it. Their weaknesses leak through their words, their eyes, their desires. And someone who knows how to listen, how to watch, how to wait, can build the perfect snare without lifting a finger. You'll step right into it because it feels like home. That's the real trick. The trap feels like comfort until it's too late. The emergency doesn't happen when the trap is built. It happens when it finally snaps shut. By the time you hear the sound, the game is already over. And people scream, they thrash, they cry about how unfair it is, how cruel it is. But they never admit it was their own steps that brought them here. The trap didn't move. It didn't chase them. It simply existed, patient and silent, while they walked willingly into it. That's what makes it brilliant and horrifying. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many traps are already set around you? How many doors you've already walked through thinking they were safe? How many hands you've already shaken that were nothing but bait? People laugh at the idea of being paranoid. They mock suspicion. They celebrate trust. But trust is the first ingredient of every perfect trap. No one sets a snare for the suspicious, only for the blind. And blindness, my friend, is the most common disease. Everyone wants to see only what comforts them, never what warns them. They'd rather stare at the bait than notice the wires. And when the emergency comes, when the walls close in, they always look shocked. As if the signs weren't screaming all along. As if the silence before wasn't suspicious. As if the too good to be true wasn't already telling the whole story. People hear alarms only when it's too late. They don't realize the quiet was the real alarm. The quiet was the trap telling you it was ready, that the stage was set, that the game was waiting. But no one listens to silence. They only listen to noise. And noise always comes after the damage. Here's the sick part, though. Some people need the trap. They crave it. They're drawn to the bait not because they don't know better, but because they want to believe in it. They want to think that the sweet fruit hanging in front of them isn't poisoned, that the door opening for them isn't rigged, that the path ahead isn't lined with knives. They want the lie more than the truth, and so they feed themselves to the design. That's why traps will never stop working, because people will never stop lying to themselves. The real emergency isn't when the trap snaps shut. It's before. It's now. It's in the moments when you still have eyes to see, when you still have the ability to step back, when you still have time to notice the strings being pulled around you. But most don't. They laugh at warnings. They think they're too clever to fall for it. They think traps are for someone else, never them. And then when the teeth bite down, when the air gets thin, when the exit vanishes, they realize the truth. The trap was always there, waiting, whispering in silence, and they were the ones who walked straight into its arms. Fear has a sound. It's not the scream, not the shout, not the chaos after the blow. It's the pulse in your ears before it happens. That pounding inside your skull, the tightening in your chest, that's the real alarm, the one you pretend not to hear. People think danger announces itself with fireworks, with explosions, with blaring horns. No, no, the real danger is quiet. It seeps into the cracks. It lingers in the background. It whispers while you're busy laughing. And the only ones who survive are those who learn to listen to the noise inside them before the world outside erupts. Because fear doesn't lie. It may twist, it may exaggerate, but it doesn't lie. That pulse is your body telling you what your mind refuses to accept, that something is wrong. But here's the tragedy. People don't trust themselves. They'll feel the shiver, the dread, the weight pressing down on them. And they'll ignore it. They'll silence the voice inside because it's inconvenient, because it ruins the illusion of control, because it makes them uncomfortable to admit they might be walking straight into a pit. They would rather drown in denial than choke on truth. And that's why danger always has the upper hand, because it doesn't need to be faster or stronger or smarter. It only needs you to doubt yourself. That hesitation is the lever, the wedge, the space it needs to strike. When you're in a room and everyone is laughing, smiling, relaxed, and yet something inside you whispers, wrong. That's not paranoia, that's instinct. That's your blood telling you the air isn't clean, that the smiles are masks, that the calm is staged. But you tell yourself, don't be silly, and you play along, you stay, you wait. And you ignore the sound of your own heartbeat screaming that you should move. It's ironic, isn't it? The very thing designed to save you is the thing you bury. The body senses danger long before the brain does, but the brain insists it knows better. And that arrogance, that dismissal, is the reason the trap doesn't even have to chase you. You'll sit and wait for it, smiling, thinking you're safe. The ones who survive emergencies aren't the strongest. They're not the bravest either. They're the ones who learn to hear fear without shame, who treat it as a compass instead of a curse. They move when others stay frozen. They leave when others laugh. They act when others hesitate. And people mock them, call them overreactors, cowards, paranoid fools, until the walls cave in. And suddenly the fool is the only one still breathing. That's the delicious irony. The instinct mocked is the instinct that saves. But people would rather be admired than alive. They'd rather blend in than stand out, even if standing out is the only way to escape. And that's why fear wins. Not because it's stronger, but because people hand it power. They give it their silence. They give it their trust. They convince themselves to ignore it until it's too late. Imagine a world where every shiver, every pounding heart, every whisper of dread was treated like fire in the distance, an undeniable sign to move, to act, to prepare. But that world doesn't exist because people cling to comfort like children clinging to blankets. They'd rather suffocate than let go. Fear is not your enemy. It's the only thing honest enough to show its face before the disaster strikes. It doesn't dress up. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't hide. It simply pounds in your veins, hoping you'll listen, begging you to wake up. But you won't. You'll dismiss it, mock it, bury it deep. And by the time you realize it was the only voice worth hearing, the silence will already have been broken, and the emergency will no longer be coming. It will be here. Patterns. They're everywhere, stitched into the floor beneath your feet, hidden in the way people smile, carved into the pauses between their words. Most never see them. They walk blind, convinced every moment is random. Every event is chaos, every betrayal a surprise. But nothing is random. Nothing. The web is already spun before you take your first step, and the threads tighten with every move you make. The irony is that the pattern is loud, screaming, flashing, repeating. And yet you ignore it because you're too distracted by the bait dangling in front of you. People think danger is unpredictable, but the truth is, it's predictable to the point of boredom. It follows the same rhythm every single time. The problem is, you don't listen long enough to hear the beat. Every so-called accident is built on repetition. Every betrayal has a rehearsal. Watch closely enough, and you'll see the same words used, the same actions played out. The same silence is filling the air just before the knife slides in. But people don't want to see it. They love the illusion of surprise. They cling to the thrill of pretending the storm came out of nowhere. It makes them feel innocent, makes them feel like victims of chance instead of architects of their own downfall. But the pattern was there all along, woven into the way they ignored the signs, the way they brushed off the tension in their gut, the way they told themselves stories to make the lie more comfortable. You want to know how a trap really works. It doesn't just wait. It teaches you the rhythm first. It lets you get comfortable with the sequence, lets you believe the routine is safe, harmless, reliable. Step, pause, bait silence. And then one day, the pattern changes ever so slightly. The pause stretches longer. The bait looks a little brighter. The silence feels heavier. That's your signal. That's the red flag waving in your face. But you don't stop. You never stop. You tell yourself it's fine. It's nothing. It's in your head. And so you walk right into the jaws that have been waiting for the moment you got too bored to notice the music. The ones who survive aren't magicians. They're not prophets. They're just better listeners. They hear the offbeat, the discord, the moment when the song no longer matches the steps. They don't laugh it off. They don't ignore it. They know that the smallest change in rhythm is never small. It's everything. It's the alarm bell before the fire burns down the room. But most people don't want to hear alarms. They want lullabies. They want to be soothed, rocked back into blindness, told that everything is fine while the floor gives way beneath them. They'd rather keep dancing to the pattern even after the music has twisted into something sharp and ugly. That's the beauty of patterns. Though they reveal more about people than the trap itself. You can study someone long enough and predict exactly when they'll fail. You'll know when they'll hesitate, when they'll reach, when they'll trust. Their habits betray them more than their words ever could. And in emergencies, habits kill faster than blades. The person who always hesitates will hesitate again. The one who always needs proof will wait too long for it. The one who always follows will walk off the cliff without a thought. The trap doesn't have to be clever when people are so perfectly predictable. And here's the twisted secret. Even when you tell them the pattern exists, even when you shout it in their face, they still won't see it. They'll nod. They'll agree. They'll pretend they're awake. But the next time the rhythm plays, they'll still fall in step. It's not that they can't break free. It's that they don't want to. Predictability feels safe, even when it's fatal. The pattern comforts them, like a noose dressed as a necklace, tightening with every breath, while they smile and call it security. The emergency isn't in the trap being set. It's in the blindness to the pattern leading up to it. If you can't see the rhythm, you're already caught, already chosen, already walking into the jaws. Because the trap doesn't need to hide. It just needs you to stay deaf to the music that's been playing all along.